Hello and welcome to the virtual edition of our year-round screening series, Film Independent Presents, and to this Q&A for the Focus Features film Limbo by Ben Sharrock.
One wrong step and they would deport us. You ever think about who you were before all of this?
I cannot be myself back home.
In Syria, very famous.
Maybe a little.
Maybe I could be your agent.
Like Tom Cruise with Jerry Maguire.
You will all have to draw on experiences from your past. For example, I used to have a dog, but then she got rabies. So I had to kill her.
What instrument is that anyway?
It's like a guitar.
Oh, we should organize a concert, and we could have a finger buffet at the interval.
On behalf of my client, I think this is a very good idea.
I'm Jenn Wilson, Senior Programmer with Film Independent. I want to thank our incredible lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and our screening partners, Vision Media. And now please welcome today's guests from the film Limbo, writer-director Ben Sharrock, and actors Amir, El-Masry, and Vikash, Bhai. Thank you for being with us. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So we'll start with Ben. How did you start being a filmmaker?
I kind of had, I mean, it's a little bit connected actually to sort of how I ended up making this film, but we'll get into that later. So it kind of started for me before I went into filmmaking. My undergraduate degree was in Arabic and politics. And then I ended up specializing in Middle Eastern cinema in my final year. And at that point, I just really kind of fell in love with Arabic cinema and Iranian cinema. And there were sort of two films at that time that kind of, I actually to this day remember, made me want to be a film director. And that was the film, The Time That Remains by Elias Suleiman and The Band's Visit by Aaron Colleran. I basically decided I want to be a film director. So then I graduated and I went to film school after that. And then I spent a year in film school. I graduated from film school. I went into advertising in Dubai, worked on the kind of agency side, and then realized that I didn't want to make commercials. I really want to make feature films. So I got a scholarship to come back to Scotland and do a Master of Fine Arts. And then basically straight after that, I made my self-funded lot from the money that was saved from the tax-free salary in Dubai, a self-funded film called Picadero. And that was in 2015. And Picadero premiered at San Sebastian Film Festival and then kind of went on this big journey around the film festival circuit. And then off the back of that, basically I got the support to write the screenplay for Limbo. And here I am.
All right. Thank you. Amir, how did you get into acting?
I always wanted to be an actor since I was a little kid. I was very shy, and my mum would take me to these kind of after school workshops, which was in the area where I grew up. And then yeah, my first kind of foray on stage, I was a cat in a play called The Musicians of Bremen. My mum actually did make the costume. It was a crossbreed between a cow and a cat. It ended up, but it's still nonetheless it stayed with me, and I can never kind of forget the electricity that I felt on stage as a young kid. I was like 6, and feeling that energy of the audience kind of reverberate onto the stage was yeah, incredible, and it stuck with me for years to come. And then yeah, and then later down the line, I went to I decided to, because my parents are very they're very new to this whole film industry thing. They didn't really know any background behind it. I still went to university, got a degree, and then I did a couple movies in Egypt by chance. It was kind of a off chance thing. My dad had met Omar Sharif in a hotel in Egypt, and and that transpired into a 2-hour conversation with him. And I went to a premiere that he was meant to go to, and off the back of that, I got talking to the director and the writer, and I bagged myself a little audition for a film, and then got that, and then but I always wanted to go to drama school, so I ended up going to Lambda. I applied and got in, and then the rest kind of happened after that.
So you got bit by the bug early. That seems to be one of those universal experiences of being a human, is being in a play or a musical as a child for which your mother made the costume.
Yeah, sure.
I was for me, it was 6 years old, and I was a munchkin in The Wizard of Oz. So
I love that. So we're both creatures or animals.
Vikash, for you, what was your how did you start being an actor?
Well, not as amazing as the previous two. I wish I could have met El-Masry. That would have been pretty cool. I was I mean, not unlike Amir, I was quite young. I must have been about 5 or 6, and I remember I wasn't actually cast as the lead. I was an understudy for the lead of a 5-year-old in a play called The Enormous Turnip, and I remember, and I'm thankful to this day to the chap that got stage fright, because I remember my year 1 teacher, Mrs. Nevitt, and she said, "Vikash, you're up," and so I leapt at the opportunity to play the farmer in the The Enormous Turnip, and so yeah, that's where I think I got the bug, and just loved being on stage from about that age. And then I was very lucky throughout my school years and throughout all of my formative years. All of the teachers that I had, they were really supportive. My mum was really supportive, and so we tried to just find as many avenues through which I could pursue doing this, where for a single parent it would be cost effective, and we did. And then I think at about the age of 15 maybe, I joined some amateur theatre groups, and then another company in Leicester in the Midlands, who kind of supported young aspiring actors to learn the craft on stage, sort of in a rep style, amongst sort of working alongside other professional actors. So you kind of got to see the professionals do it and learn whilst watching, whilst being on stage, and whilst being in rep. So that's kind of how I cut my teeth in the business. And then got an agent, moved to London, and here we are.
Did anybody ever say, "Weren't you in The Enormous Turnip? I think I saw you. You totally slayed in that, man."
Yeah.
So Ben,
it's tough walking with Vikash down the street.
Yeah.
Always stopping him saying, "You're that guy from The Enormous Turnip."
Farmer from The Enormous Turnip. Yeah.
I
Even
hate
in Europe.
Vikash,
so you talked about it a little bit, Ben, but what was it that inspired you to start writing this film, Limbo?
Yeah, so it goes all the way back to my time studying Arabic and politics, because as part of the degree, I spent a year in Damascus, studying at Damascus University, and this was just the year before the civil war started. So then it was sort of, I suppose, kind of flash forward to the time, when I was in film school. I was really interested in sort of refugee subject matter, and actually wrote a short film set in the Sahrawi refugee camps in southern Algeria. And then we went out there and worked with an NGO on a project there, and also kind of started, we were in the camps developing the short film. And then we came back, and this was meant to be our graduation project for film school. And then basically the university didn't give us the insurance to go back out there, because it was too dangerous, because Al-Qaeda were operating in the area. And then kind of, flash forward again, I still had this desire to make a film about the kind of broad refugee crisis. And I was still in touch with people that I'd made friends with in Syria, and the refugee crisis at the time became very prevalent in the media. And I was really struck by the representation of refugees and how on the one side we had the demonizing of refugees, which is dehumanizing. And then on the other side, we had the pitying of refugees, which is also dehumanizing. And I felt like there was this gap in the middle where we weren't looking at refugees as human beings like us that we can relate to. So I basically set off on this journey to write this screenplay.
For the actors, what do you think it was that attracted you to want to work on this project for Amir?
For many reasons. One was the fact that Ben puts Omar into the forefront of the story. There isn't a Western character that is showing him a better way or a better way of living. Also the fact that I've never laughed and cried from reading a script alone. And also, throughout the film, we are constantly reminded that Omar would rather be back home with his family, within his culture, and he writes Syria in such a beautiful, poetic way, reminding us of its culture and its music and its food and everything. Something that is not quite so well portrayed in other pieces of art before that. So that's what kind of drew me to the script, first off.
For you, Vikash?
I think when I first read it, just turning over the first couple of pages, it was that scene with Boris and Helga, and I remember just laughing out loud and just turning page after page, not wanting to put this thing down, and then it ended, and then I didn't want it to end. I just was holding on to this thing like, wow, this is truly something special that's landed in my lap right now. And I remember saying to my wife that I have to do everything. I really, really have to do everything more than you've ever done before to try and get this to land this part. And there was something about the character Farhad that really just resonated with me as well. His innocence, and just that kind of an amalgamation of all of that, really. Yeah.
Ben, I'm curious about the tone of the film and how you balance the seriousness of the subject matter of people, refugees living in limbo on a remote Scottish island, which is in most other films, treated in sort of a sober, serious fashion. Was it something that worried you, adding the humor and the lightness to this, and how do you think that you made it work so well?
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive challenge balancing the tone of the film, throughout the process, and that challenge really started during the screenwriting process, and it was, I mean, part of in the writing, there was a huge amount of research involved as well, and it was, I suppose, when I first, it's quite integral to me, this sort of balance of humor and drama in general. So that's sort of what I'm really interested in as a filmmaker. So I'm interested in kind of taking quite serious subject matters and often socio-political subject matters and then using humor within that. So I knew that when, with this film, I started out with a desire to make a film about the refugee crisis. And I knew that I wanted to use humor in doing that. And then, it was, I think in the research as well, there was definitely that kind of, I was very nervous whether I could, do that and whether that would be appropriate. And I ended up, meeting with people that had been through the asylum system and NGOs, people that work for organizations that work with refugees on a day-to-day basis, and really just asking them the question, like, as well. Is it, can I use humor here? Is this appropriate? Like, is it okay to do this? And it, it came back with a resounding yes. And actually people that, had been through the asylum system, refugees really, they wanted a different depiction of the refugee crisis. They wanted to find a way to use humor within that. And so it was, so I kind of, I suppose I felt buoyed by that kind of initial research, but then it was just really a constant challenge all the way through, kind of being very delicate with every aspect, and going from the script into even the audition process, and then the rehearsals with these guys, when you're hearing the script out loud for the first time, and you're then kind of balancing, balancing the performance and the dialogue, and then and even looking at the sort of detail in how we can sort of balance the tone through the use of the cinematography, how we lens, and the scenes, the use of composition, and even right down to the costume design. Like, I think there's part of that sort of underlay of humor, it comes from the composition, the use of color in the frame. So there would be moments maybe where someone within the frame's like hat is too bright, so it kind of feels like the scene is too comedic, and that has to be kind of brought down a little bit. So that went on throughout the entire process, and then obviously even getting into the edit as well, and the post-production again we had quite a long post-production period, and that was a lot of that was really down to really making sure that we were balancing the tone in the right way, and kind of doing justice to the subject matter, because it's obviously a huge responsibility. So it was essential that we got that right.
I wanted to ask Vikash about working with that extremely famous chicken actor. I mean, what was that like? Was he constantly trying to steal the scenes from you?
Freddie was an absolute scene stealer. Yeah. It was cool, man. There's that adage about not working with children and animals. And I mean, I thought he was great. He was a great on-scene partner, it got a bit crazy at times. I think there were some times we were trying to do this bit where we wanted the chicken to almost be flying out of my hands, and we tried to do this a few times, and we just couldn't get it because he was so settled, in my hands. And so I'd almost have to try and we had the lady whose chicken it was. She said, that you can give him a little lift and he'll fly off. And so I do exactly that. I give him a little bump, hoping that he'd flap away, and he was just content. So I think in the end we didn't get that, did we? The chicken flapping.
The chicken whisper.
The chicken whisper, yeah.
But
I got to chase chickens in a what they call pen. No, that was great. Yeah.
The chicken also had a stunt double as well. That was also important.
How does one find a chicken actor or chicken actors?
Audition process.
Yeah.
For the agent. In this case, Ben had a rigorous audition process for the chicken.
Worldwide search. But as I say, we needed twin chickens because we had to have two of them. So they also, that was kind of had to whittle it down as well, because we were looking for identical twin chickens.
They had their own trailers. Me and Vikash would just sometimes change
umbrellas. Sometimes we were.
Did the understudy chicken ever get to go on, or was it just basically the star chicken?
Yeah, well, no, they had different skills. So like one was much more kind of leaning towards the stunt side of things, and then the other one was kind of more on the kind of like emotional sort of more of it. So
wow, that was really seamless. That was really seamless. I didn't realize there was more than one chicken actor.
if you watch that scene back where Farhad has to say goodbye, that was not the stunt chicken. You can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Emotional connection right there.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at it more closely.
Although they were squabbling because the stunt chicken started to feel like he could do that scene, and then the other one, you know, is kind of like
Divas.
So much drama. So one of my favorite parts of the movie is near the end when Omar has this sort of imaginary conversation with his brother Nabil in this abandoned cottage, and I think that I love a scene like that. Any movie that includes a scene like that of a character having an imaginary conversation with someone that they know very well, I absolutely adore. And this is so amazing with the, you know, them talking about their childhood and then eating the apricot leather. And Ben, was this scene something that you envisioned early on in your process, or was it something that came later?
it was. I mean, I love that scene as well. That scene's very, very close to my heart. Yeah, and I find it kind of very emotional every time I watch that scene. Actually, it was sort of like, so it was very important for me, I think, from quite early on. But I think narratively it was there from the very beginning, because that sort of narrative, that journey of Omar and the connection that he has with his family, and the connection that he has with the brother, and the different choices that they made, you know, was kind of very integral to Omar's emotional journey, and that sort of the question in him of whether, you know, he made the right decision to leave Syria. So yeah, certainly it was kind of, it was actually, yeah, it was there from very early on. I have to say, actually, in the first draft of it, it was going to be, it was going, I don't like giving this away, it was going to be a video call with the brother in the very first draft, where I think he still had to go up to the mountain because it was the only place with signal, but he was going to video call the brother. And then it just, for me, it got to the point where I was like, it doesn't, like, cinematically, this isn't going to do it. Like, you know, it has to be something more than this. And I'm really interested in magical realism, and, you know, one of my early influences, as well, as I kind of mentioned a little bit, was with Iranian cinema, and in particular the film director Majid Majidi, who used sort of Sufi magical realism in his filmmaking. So part of that kind of idea of then actually having the brother come in this space, and this being, you know, part of this sort of, yeah, magical realist moment, came from that connection. And I mean, I'm so glad that scene is there, and it's done in exactly the way that we wanted to do it. I feel like it would have been a very different film had he just had a kind of FaceTimed the brother at the top of the mountain.
So for the actors, there's a lot of moments in this, you know, that are sort of inside out acting, or sort of seeing less dialogue, but seeing their emotional reaction, watching the emotions sort of play across their face at times. Did you find those moments difficult, Amir, or is that something that you and Ben talked about a lot? Like, what is on Amir's mind, and what do we want to see coming out here?
That's a great question. We were very lucky that, and I was very privileged as an actor to have such a beautiful working relationship with not only the cast, but with the director and writer. It was always a constant communication and dialogue throughout. You know, again, you know, from reading it, my instincts would be breaking down every half an hour. But we had this lovely language. at one point it was, you know, we rehearsed for 2 weeks just to get the kind of the choreography right, the movements right. But in terms of our objective and our, you know, how we act in the scene itself, you know, there were moments where, let's say the telephone scene, where I brought a lot of myself, a lot of my own emotions into that. And then Ben would come across and say, listen, this is, you're holding buckets full of water. And if they spill, then the audience are released from that pain. You need to hold on to that until the end. If you crack now, then that's it. Then we stop following you. And then we also had another kind of buzzword, which was Buster Keaton. And it was, you know, a moment of like giving Ben nothing in a scene. You know, we can see it in your eyes, we're this close. And again, Amir would want to go and kind of be very expressive, and then Ben would say, no, give me nothing. So I was like, so like Buster Keaton, he's like, yes. And so there was always a moment in any other scene, he would just say, it's Buster for this one. And we'd just know. It got to that point where we would just know that there was a unsaid kind of thing of where we want the scene to go, how to travel and stuff. And that's great. I mean, we were so lucky. And then again, you know, being with someone so giving and warm like Vikash, and being so generous, you know, we stayed together for a few days, you know, rehearsing as well. We'd always be talking about character, always be talking about where we came from, what our objectives are in every scene. Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, it just felt like a band of brothers on that set. You know, we would, you know, whenever we had time off, if we did, you know, we'd be going for walks or driving in this vast, beautiful island that had nothing. But you know, and those moments are precious to really get to know everybody and connect with them.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this film. When is it coming out in the US then, Ben?
It is coming out the 30th of April.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that will just be streaming, or will it have a chance to be playing in theaters somewhere?
It's going to be in, yeah, it's going to be in theaters.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. So yeah, in theaters from the 30th of April. I'm not sure how long for, but yes, definitely going to cinemas.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for all your work on this. It's such a beautiful and incredible film, and I know people are really going to love it.
No, thank you. Really great talking to you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.